Writing the post. We are going to cover a lot of different information in this lesson, so feel free to grab a cup of coffee, put your feet up and get comfy because we are going to be here for a while. To keep things simple, we are going to run through everything in the order it appears in the post: headline, extract, table of contents, introduction, subheaders, chapters and conclusion. Just bear in mind this is not the order that you should be writing your post in, but we'll come back to this later. Headlines. A catchy and provocative headline is great for shares and clicks. We've talked about headlines quite a lot, especially in Rules for Great Writing, so I'm not going to repeat the same information. Instead, I'm going to give you this great recipe to follow. If you can, try to get a specific benefit, a number, a timeline, a power word, and your chosen keyword into your headline. For example, if my keyword is marathon training, my title could be How to Smash Marathon Training in 10 Weeks. Or if I wanted my keyword earlier, it could be Marathon Training Secrets, Run Like a Pro in 10 Weeks. I know what you're thinking. That is a lot to ask and a lot of information to cram into a headline. Don't worry. If you can't squeeze all of these in, you don't have to. But it's a good place to start drafting your headlines. One tool that is vital for writing headlines, especially for beginner content writers, is CoSchedule's Headline Analyzer. And I'm going to give you a quick demonstration now. So we're going to search for CoSchedule Headline Analyzer, and it should be the top result. CoSchedule is actually a scheduling tool for social media. At some point, it might look like you have to sign up. You don't. And sometimes there will be a pop-up asking for your information. Just put in a load of gobbledygook and hit next. This tool is free and you'll be able to access it. So as an example, let's put in my headline, How to Smash Marathon Training in 10 Weeks. And I've scored a 72, which is good. Why have I scored a 72? So it's great that I've got some emotional words in there, but ideally I could do with some power words or some uncommon words. How to is just always a great thing to put in headlines because it increases the utility. So I've got some points there. And length analysis. There's the right amount of length and the right amount of words. When skimming content, most readers read the first and the last 3 words. So it's just highlighted those to make sure I'm happy with them. Here we've got the keywords. Ideally, we could do with marathon training in there. And sentiment. As we said earlier, positive content is more likely to be shared. There's the other side of this where extremely positive or extremely negative content is likely to get a click. A neutral sentiment like this one here, not quite so likely. Hence why I've only got a little average face, so I've lost some points there. Shows you how it will show up on Google or in an email. So what if you have no idea where to start? All I know is that my headline is going to have the keyword marathon training. I know that I need a benefit, so let's put in the word finish because finishing a marathon is quite an accomplishment. We need a power word, put in a random one, fierce. We need a timeline, 6 months, and we need a number, which we've got in 6 months, so we won't bother adding a new one. So now let's try and make this make sense to the end reader. Fierce didn't make any sense, so I just took it out. Analyze the results, not quite so good, 62. Where have I gone wrong? No power words and no uncommon words. All the words I chose were way too bland. We've got a time period, which is great, and the length is okay. Let's work on improving that sentiment. I know this is going to be bad, but analyze it. Oh, it improved it a little bit. I know for a fact that's going to be way too long. 12 words, 70 characters. But I have increased the sentiment and I have got my power words in there. So now I just need to cut it down. Let's try that one. Amazing training, crossed the marathon line in 6 months. Haven't improved it. Still got 64. Improved the word count, kept the sentiment, but need to do better. Okay, that's got us up to 70. How to feel amazing crossing the marathon finish line in 6 months. See, it's impressed the computer. It's just not really impressing the human. It doesn't sound that amazing to me. It ticks all the boxes. It's got the power word. It's got the how-to. Too many words. But we've got the positive sentiment. Think we can do better. How to finish your first marathon in 6 months and feel epic. This scored the same as far as the computer's concerned, but to me that just reads a little bit better and sounds a little bit more natural. Epic's an emotional word, not a power word. Damn it. Still too many words. and I've lost my sentiment. How to finish your first marathon in 6 months and feel amazing. Now I've got my power word, I've got my how-to, still a little bit too wordy, but it's now yellow, not red, so not so bad. It's the right character length, and I've got my sentiment. I'm happy with that. That's the title I'm keeping. The extract or description. This is your last chance to entice a click. If your headline wasn't good enough to catch their attention, but not quite enough to click, the extract is where they're going to make up their mind. You want to give away a little bit more information, but still keep them curious. For example, our marathon extract would be something like, join the 26.2 mile party, or so much pain, so much reward. Or you could give away a spoiler tip, like put your name on your t-shirt and people will cheer for you. Table of contents. A table of contents isn't needed for all blog formats, but they're great for the longer posts, like the guidebooks and the case studies. A table of contents can give a perceived sense of value and trigger the same feeling of awe that a long post can. And if you want to include button links to subheaders, that's also really useful for the end user. Introduction. So we've won the first battle. They're on the page. The next battle is to get them to read all the way to the end. And this isn't easy. The introduction has to be the most interesting part of the piece. You've got to sell it and you've got to make them actually want to read it. If the introduction is dull, you're gonna lose the reader. And there are lots of different ways that you can make your introduction great. Make the very first sentence a strong one. This is also known as a hook, and it's designed to grab their attention. Maybe also create an information deficit to keep them curious. Something like, I only had 4 days and it felt like my nipples were about to fall off. Or, have you ever been tempted to quit? You can invoke whatever emotions you want. You can be funny, you can be dramatic, you can be relatable. It really doesn't matter. You just want to do something to grab their attention. Another way is to present the problem. Make it clear what the problem is that you're actually solving. Maybe include some common challenges, and this will position your post as a solution to those challenges. For example, most people will never run a marathon. They fixate on the pain, the time dedicated to training, and the chafing. Be relatable. The simple truth is, we don't like perfect, flawless people. We like vulnerable people, people with flaws and real life issues. A couple of examples: my dating life took a nosedive as I fell in love with Vaseline. Or my friends weren't happy I was turning down nights out with them and choosing early nights before a morning run. Or you can briefly mention the benefits and tease how to get them. Like, there is no better feeling than strangers cheering your name. Or carb loading, raising thousands for charity, crossing the finish line and feeling an enormous wave of endorphins and pride. It's all just 10 weeks away. Briefly introduce the topic. This isn't really relevant for marathons. Everyone knows what they are. But say you're writing about ultra marathons. The average Joe might not know what you're talking about, so you need to bring them up to speed really briefly in the introduction. For example, ultramarathons range from 30 to over 100 miles, and they're not for the faint-hearted. To train, preppers need to run at least 70% of their ultramarathon every day. And finally, promise to teach them how it works. For example, in this post, I'm going to show you exactly how I did it, step by step. Don't worry about having to squeeze all of these different techniques into your introduction. You do not need all of them. In fact, if you tried to use all of them, it might be a little bit overwhelming. Choose 2 or 3 that suit your topic and your post best and go with them. Writing subheaders or subtitles. If someone scans down the page, the subtitles should tell them exactly what they're getting. And this is really important. If people have come on your page, but they're not 100% that they want to read it all the way through, the first thing they're going to do is scroll down to see if it looks good. One way to win those people over is to keep your subheaders interesting and benefit focused. So for example, instead of using rest and recovery as a subheading, try don't let your injuries or mental burnout ruin your big day, or just simply how to stop injuries and mental burnout. Writing chapters. Now people are at your first chapter. They've read the intro, they understand the topic, the problem and the benefits. You've hinted that this post is the answer to all their problems, but you haven't actually backed it up with anything yet. The first section is a great opportunity to do just that. Sell people on the value of your content. Show the results and the benefits it's brought for yourself and others. Or if it's a case study, dig deep into the results and give lots of details. Now we're at the main body of the text, and there's still a couple of things that you can do. Just like a brief introduction to the topic is sometimes necessary in the introduction, sometimes the subtopics will need their own brief introduction too. For example, if we had a chapter on finding the right shoes and the subtopic was gait analysis, you might want to quickly explain to the readers what gait analysis is in the introduction to that chapter before jumping in. Another thing to bear in mind when writing these chapters is to make it actionable. This is all part of making your content valuable. If you've made a promise, in this case to run a marathon in 10 weeks, you need to give them everything they need in order to do that. Don't make them go elsewhere for any information. Give plenty of detail. Structure. A big part of writing these chapters is structure, and some brains are just hardwired for structure and others aren't. If you find yourself struggling to organise your points, this system will help you. Simply note your main points and put them in order. Then note your subpoints and put them in order too. For example, if we are going to stick with our marathon post example, some of my main points might be get the right kit, find the right drink, warm up properly, and do a dress rehearsal. You can structure your points in chronological order, order of importance, price order, difficulty level, or simply based on your gut instinct of what order flows best. If none of these options fit, I would recommend ordering them best to worst to best. The idea behind this is that if you ordered them best to worst, the post would be a complete anticlimax. But if you ordered them worst to best, no one's going to be impressed enough to keep on reading after the first few. With best to worst to best, you avoid both of these issues. The other thing about this is that when people do tend to skip ahead or skim through posts, they tend to speed read the middle section. So that's where you want to put all of your worst points. Once I've got my main points in order, I can then break each of them down into subpoints. So for example, with the get the right kit point, the subpoints might be socks, shoes, running shorts, and running tops. Then I need to order these too. And I don't need to structure them in the same way that I've structured the main points or the same way that I've structured any other subpoints. For this example, I could do them in order of importance or in order of price. Once you've done this for all of your main points and all of your subpoints, you'll have a post structure to follow. Your readers won't realise they're following a structure or even notice the underlying outline at all, which is perfect. All we want them to do is flow along happily. Writing the conclusion. It sounds a bit weird, but you've got to tell readers when it's over. Don't just stop writing, give them a proper conclusion. This could be a brief summary of your main points. You could compare your solution with common or inferior approaches. For example, our marathon post could bust some common training myths and conclude that our way is better. Or it could be a call to action. I'm a big fan of this and it's a very effective conclusion. You can use it to increase the value for the readers by imploring them to take action and do something beneficial right now. If it's a list post, you could tell them to pick an item off the list and action it immediately. For example, buy a great pair of running socks right now as an easy first step towards finishing your marathon. Or you could ask them to comment their opinion or any great tips they've come across. This kind of half benefits them and half benefits you. People love voicing their opinion and comments are always good for you too. Or you can use call to actions to direct traffic wherever you want it to go. You could implore them to share and benefit others. You could ask them to sign up to your mailing list for more content, sign a petition to change what's happening, or follow you on social media for more content. If you want to improve the effectiveness of your call to action, especially if it's an email subscription, you can offer them a content upgrade. This is when you offer extra content in exchange for something like an email address. This could be an ebook, a cheat sheet, a guidebook, anything that's on a PDF that you could quickly email to them. The most important thing is this has to have an obvious benefit to the reader. It has to save them time, save them money, something to get them closer to whatever their end goal is. I recommend going back to your target customer avatar and asking yourself, what do they genuinely want? Finally, the writing order. When I'm putting together a post, I tend to do it in this order. I decide on the topic, I decide on the headline, I make a rough structure outlining the content I want to cover with all my points and my subpoints. I then write out the chapters, and to be honest, as I'm doing this, I'll tend to adjust and finalise the structure as I go. I'll then write out the subheaders, write the conclusion, write the introduction, and then finally write the extract or the description. This is just personally the way that I do it. It's completely up to you how you want to write out your posts. I know a lot of people would rather leave the headline to the end so it's accurate to any changes in the posts that come along as they write it. For me, I like doing the headline first because it helps me create the structure around it. But again, it's completely up to you. One last thing, I've put together a Frankenstein writing cheat sheet. Note, this would be an excellent example of a content upgrade. This is there as a PDF file so you can download it as it is, or as a normal Word file if you want to swap things around a bit. So the next time you sit down to write a post, you do not have to rewatch this whole lesson. You can use this to Frankenstein a post together using the options that you like best.